All right. That's fine. All ages means all ages, right? All right. So this is a meditation about paper. And so if you were a poet, you would see that in every sheet of paper, and in this sheet of paper, there's a cloud floating. Because without a cloud, there would not be rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And if we don't have trees, we can't make paper. And so the cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud isn't here, the paper can't be here either. And so we can say that the cloud and the paper inter-are. And so this is from Thich Nhat Hanh, and he says that interbeing is not a dictionary word, but we think about inter as in interlacing, and the verb to be, we come up with our new word, to interbe. And so without a cloud, we don't have paper, and so the cloud and the paper inter-are. And if we look even more deeply at this paper, we can see the sunshine. Because if the sunshine is not there, the forest cannot grow, and nothing can grow if there is no sunshine. Even we need sunshine to grow. And so we know that the sunshine is in this piece of paper. The paper and the sunshine inter-are. And if we continue to look at the paper, we see the person who cut the tree, the person who brought it to the mill, the person who made it into paper. And we see wheat too, because we know that those people can't exist without their daily bread. And so the wheat that became the bread is also in this piece of paper. And so are the parents of the person who cut down the tree. And so when we look at the world in this way, we see that without all of these things, the wheat and the sunshine and the cloud and the people and the parents, without all of these things, this paper would not be. And all these things inter-are. And now our musical meditation.
Today's reading is Communities of Memory and Promise by Kendall R. Gibbons. Our communities of memory and promise are founded upon covenants because we all need a defense against the impulse of immediate feelings that challenge our best intentions. It is necessary to be reminded from time to time of what you said you were going to do and what you really want, over and above the lure of momentary comfort. Covenant is our word for the solemn promise that counteract the randomness of a future in which anything and everything is possible by committing us in advance to certain relationships and values. We do this because we build with intention. Even with difficulty, it's more satisfying in the long run than the pleasure that we happen to encounter. We do it in time-consuming rituals, invoking powers that we scarcely know how to name, because we are seeking some way to give our lives the density and dignity and depth that we suspect with longing might yet be possible.
Thank you for that reading, Charles. And I am reminded, I'm getting some feedback. Oh, there we go. I am reminded in hearing the name of the Reverend Kendall Gibbons that she had a medical event at General Assembly this year. And I wish I'd thought about it earlier because there are some fundraisers to try to help her in this time. And I would have put the links in the order of service. I did not. So hopefully I can remember to put them either in next week's newsletter or up on the Facebook page, because it's a hard thing to be away from home, have a medical emergency, and then have all of the financial difficulties of travel and future care and try to get back to home. So keep the Reverend Kendall Gibbons in your thoughts. So this morning, we are all here together this morning because we are looking for something. And whether we're here now in this physical space, present with one another, whether we're watching online and sharing the time, if not the space, and even if we're watching at some later date across the space and the time, we are here because we want to be. Mine did. Perhaps it was a desire for knowledge, but these are things that can be done alone. Being in a religious community becomes something else. It adds a layer. And so it might not be what we initially sought, but we found something here in our togetherness in this place, and it's why we stay. Unitarian Universalism often runs in parallel with the dominant American culture. We have a deep history, and we are present in a lot of the cultural and historical moments in our times. And so I think, much like American culture, we also emphasize self-reliance and individualism and these great American virtues. And to be clear, these are true things. They are virtues. We are individuals, and we are unique, and we are on our own journeys. And our inner authority stands even against groups. But there is more to the story of who we are as human beings. We become who we are by being in relationships with our families, with our friends and our chosen families, with colleagues, in all of our various communities. As we move through our lives at every age and every stage, we bump up against and rub up against others. We take in or we reject bits and pieces, and we assemble who we are through our social interactions. The world into which we were born has stamped us, for better or worse, with its culture. And so we become ourselves as individuals through this push and pull as we make choices, some conscious, some unconscious, regarding how we will respond to the world we are in and to the people we encounter in it. And as Unitarian Universalists, we affirm, on the one hand, the inherent worth and dignity of the individual, and on the other hand, the interdependent web of life in which we are embedded. And we're not alone in this. Most world traditions have some way of naming this balancing act, of holding individual distinction and interdependence in balance. And all of this is to say that this dynamic tension is ever present. It's always present even before we name it. Our responsibilities to our communities are also present before we ever name them. And so the key to religious community in particular is intentionality. And so we're doing half the work just in naming and acknowledging these balances and these tensions between individuals and relationships. And then the other half of the work is in exploring how these things play out in our lives. And I imagine that some of you looked at the service description and thought, covenant again. We talk about covenant so much. Yes, covenant again, because it is our foundation and it's ever present. Whether we formalize it or not, we are always bound to one another. We are always tied with threads of care, threads of conflict, threads of expectation and engagement. We are always accountable to one another, responsible for one another, whether we like it or not. And so when we write our covenants, we are lifting up this interconnection. And we say, I choose this one, and I choose how I will live into it. And in that moment of choice, they become an expression of our individual will and our spirit as we take on deeper commitments to our pre-existing interconnections. We call ourselves a covenantal community, and we define ourselves less by what we believe and more about how we have decided to constitute our community and by the promises that we make to one another. At every level, part of what we do is to seek to name and define our obligations to one another. And at the smallest level, it's one-to-one. A covenant is the basis for marriage in our tradition. And in that case, within the ritual, it is spoken out loud. But even in friendship, we have our obligations, our expectations, even if we don't delineate them quite as carefully or as formally or as much in public. And any committee, any small group in our churches are likely to establish covenants for the time that they spend together. Our church as a whole community has a covenant. And at the upper level, the Unitarian Universalist Association is also covenantal. And those terms and those conditions and expectations are set down in our association's bylaws. This goes all the way back for us to our earliest Puritan forebears. And what makes a covenant more than an ordinary promise, one-to-one, or a legal contract, is this awareness of something that is greater than ourselves that holds the covenant. For our Puritan forebears, and for the Jewish communities on which they attempted to model themselves, covenants were sworn before God as a witness and also, in certain circumstances, as a party to the covenant. And for us in our communities today, I have argued in other sermons and other places and times that our witness is our memory, our historical legacy, and our love. The relationships themselves bear witness to our covenants. Covenants will be strained and they will be broken because they're aspirational and we are only human. And we will fail to live up to others' expectations and frequently our own expectations of ourselves. The witness to our agreements gives us an orientation, something to aim toward, as we engage in the work of reflection and repair. And so a legal contract might lay out consequences, and it might lay out a very specific plan for restoration, but covenants touch our spirits, and they ask us to reach deeper and to reach beyond, to engage in the work of transformation. They ask us to continually move toward deeper and greater love. In this way, we become people of faith. Because we keep the faith as well as we can, we are faithful to one another. We are faithful to the history of our communities and to the aspirations our communities hold. And our covenants are what ask us to return, to rededicate ourselves, and to try again. The promise that covenantal relationship holds for us is that the transformation it demands will shape us into the people that deep down we do actually long to be. Even as our relationships make demands on us, they offer the potential to make us more ourselves, not less. We often hear people speak of their friends and their lovers, making them want to be better people. And this is what it should mean to be bound together in this way. And so while accountability can feel like a burden, demanding that we give so much to others and to the world, what it ultimately is a call to become our truest self. And this is how our communities balance the individual and the whole. We are faithfully oriented not to a loss of self, but to an increase and a deepening. This is slow work. It doesn't happen overnight. All of us have at some point or another been in some kind of a long-term relationship with family, with friends. And most of us have learned the hard way that being an us is hard. It takes time, it takes effort. It takes courage to discover which compromises have not gone far enough and which ones have gone a little too far. We learn to perpetually walk fine lines to maintain our own integrity while also upholding the commitments we've made to weave our lives together. We make mistakes, we attempt repair, and we know that it's worth it because we are oriented toward love. And beyond these one-to-one relationships, it's not different at a larger community level. It's just a little fuzzier as we try to imagine and broaden ourselves to encompass a love that extends beyond what's right in front of us. At its best, what religious community can offer us is a widening of vision to open us up to the truth of how deeply we are interconnected. And our covenants are a container that create a safer, it can't be perfectly safe, but it's safer place for us to explore our vision together. Our covenants make a space where we say, yes, I will walk with you, and I will open my heart to you if you will open your heart to me. And we'll figure it out together. And if we walk together, both you and I will become something more than we were before we arrived. Together, we learn that not only are we loving and beloved, we learn how to be loving and beloved. In so doing, we also become the people we need to be in a larger world that is desperately in need of love and interconnection. From our firm foundation within our safe container of covenant, we learn how to carry our transformations beyond this room, beyond these doors, to offer hope and care to a world that is in desperate need of these things. Amen, and may it be so.
Our congregation exists and thrives through the gifts of those who call this place their spiritual home. If you are here with us in the sanctuary, you may put your gift in the collection plate as it goes by. Otherwise, you may make a gift online or send in a check. Please give as generously as you are willing and able to our Share the Plate offering to support UU Mass Action and the mission of UUCR. If this is your first time with us, your presence is gift enough. Thank you.
We're going to start over because I hadn't turned the mic on. Our closing reading this morning is from the poet Marge Percy. Connections are made slowly. Sometimes they grow underground. You cannot always tell by looking what is happening. More than half a tree is spread out in the soil under your feet. Penetrate quietly as the earthworm that blows no trumpet. Fight persistently as the creeper that brings down the tree. Spread like the squash plant that overruns the garden. Gnaw in the dark and use the sun to make sugar. Weave real connections. Create real nodes. Build real houses. Live a life you can endure. Make life that is loving. Keep tangling and interweaving and taking more in, a thicket and a bramble, wilderness to the outside, but to us it is interconnected with rabbit runs and burrows and lairs. This is how we are going to live for a long time. Not always. For every gardener knows that after the digging, after the planting, after the long season of tending and growth, the harvest comes. Our closing hymn this morning is also from the Gray Hymnal, and the lyrics are also in the order of service. It is number 323, Break Not the Circle. Please rise if you would like to.
Break not not the circle of enabling love, where people grow forgiven and forgiving. Break not the circle, make it wider still, till it includes and grace all living. Upon that this covenant comes to life, their words of freedom are with humor spoken, and people will sorrow wrong and guilt. What will that do when bonds remain broken? Join hand the movement of the love that frees, till people of whatever race or nation will truly themselves stand on their feet. See eye to eye with laughter and elation.
And now please join me in our chalice extinguishing words, which are also in the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts. And so if you have found hope here this morning, if you have found love or peace or joy or renewal, any of these things, may they carry you through the week to come. And may you carry them forth into a world that needs them. Blessed be, and go in peace. All right, everybody.